Hello and welcome to ShePack. I'm your host, Lenice Wolf, and today I'm joined by Shilpi Sharma, previously the Enterprise Transformation and Client Advisory Director at Microsoft. She is a seasoned professional with over 22 years of cross-industry experience that has spanned India, Thailand, ex-Yugoslavia, and the United States. She's a vanguard in digital and cloud transformation, championing innovation, strategic planning to steer enterprises through the waves of globalization and technology disruption. And my favorite part, she is an advocate for women's personal and professional growth. In today's episode, we're going to be discussing empowering women across cultures. Shilpi, my friend, welcome to ShePack. How are you?
I am absolutely wonderful, Linus, and thank you so much for inviting me to speak here. And it is an absolute honor. Thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I was just sharing with Shilpi on the back end how beautiful her background is. And I was asking her, I said, is that a photo for those who are listening? She has these like beautiful, colorful arrangements. It's absolutely stunning. So I encourage everyone to look at the YouTube of this, but that is a real background that credit to her husband helped her put together. So just, I'm a huge fan of your background.
I appreciate that, Linus. I will definitely let my husband know and thank him.
Now, you've mastered the art of adapting across continents and industries. So let's set the stage for our audience for our conversation today. Can you tell us more about your upbringing and the cultural expectations of women in India?
Oh, definitely, Linus. Definitely. So my upbringing, I would say until undergrad, I have lived in 4 different countries, as you mentioned. I have lived at home. I have lived in boarding schools. I have lived at relatives' homes. I have even lived sometimes with strangers growing up. And throughout this backdrop, one of the things that I'd like you to keep in mind is I grew up in a society where patriarchy was prevalent, and my upbringing, decision making, and overall growth had that backdrop with all the decisions that were made for me during those years. And most of the women that I grew up with, all of them were educated. However, none of them work. They all lived as housewives. They all lived in multi-generation homes, in joint families. Amazing women. They were demure, gracious, accommodating. And as a kid, I absolutely loved them, admired them. And I also grew up with a similar expectation of myself, that this is what I wanted to be and this is who I was going to be, right? And there was a brief period, I remember, where I wanted to be a pilot, but that was not an option because the women I grew up with was something that I expected of myself, and the society also, and my family expected that of me. And it became part of who I was in my growing up years. And I think most Indian women tend to be that way, at least in my generation. I think the world is changing now, but in the 80s, 90s, when I was brought up, this was a very commonplace persona that women played, and I grew up with that same expectations, and I think I embodied that for the longest time.
Mm-hmm. And how do you feel like those expectations influenced your early career choices?
Picking up on that point about me wanting to be a pilot, right? And I asked my father about it. I'm like, what do you think? It would be so exciting. I'd be traveling. I'd be flying a plane, so on and so forth. And the feedback that I got from both my parents, but how would you manage a family? Who would take care of your husband? Who would take care of your kids? And the feedback I got from them from a selection of education path was, you can either become a teacher, Shilpi, or you can do something in finance, right? Work at a bank, which is low stakes from a commitment perspective, with the persona that I was pursuing. And so I ended up getting into finance as an education path, and did finance and technology as an undergrad. Got my first job at Wells Fargo. It was very steady. It was low key, and throughout the years, I would say the first 10, 12 years of my career path, right? I worked at different banking industries, different financial institutions, turned down pretty much every promotion Pretty
Oh,
much
wow.
every job opportunity that came through that required traveling, pitched a little bit because I love traveling. Because of my background, living in so many different countries, I enjoyed being part of those cultures. So this, the those I guess the formative years of my career kind of changed it, or set the path for quite a number of years, and I think even my growth became much more centered around
Mm.
financial services, centered around more industry focused stuff, and even the consulting that I did were all local stuff. Having said that, the positive aspect of this was I have been very, very lucky that I did well in my roles, which meant that I ended up getting opportunities that were very interesting. I met amazing people. I ended up working for companies that were phenomenal in its culture and in what they were driving at. So I'm very thankful for that journey, despite it not necessarily being how I would have shaped it now.
Yeah. Well, and I think it makes sense, right? Because just culturally, expectations from you was to be home, to have a family. And, you had mentioned that you turned down promotions, but even in the intro, I mean, your career has spanned multiple continents. So I'm would love to understand, like, what brought you to those multiple continents. Was there at some point that you decided to take a promotion?
Oh, yes. So a quick delineation, right? So
Yeah.
the initial years, I was living as a kid, meaning like this is the first 22 years of my life. So I'm not really working. This is my father being working in different countries. So I was
Mm.
part of the package of, as a family, going to those different places. So I got
Oh,
exposure
I see.
to those cultures and this thing. And then when I came to the US, my professional career has been, yes, working with global teams.
Mm.
And I've worked with teams in India, I've worked with teams in Europe, I've worked with other parts of Asia, Japan, Singapore, Australia, and taken travel jobs to those places. But those have been recent, as in the last 10 years.
Oh, I
But
see.
prior to that, it was all US based.
Okay, that makes sense. So you had, exposure to all these multiple continents. How did you feel like those diverse experiences influenced your professional outlook, especially as you mentioned, you came to the US and had more of a global reach?
So I think I'll kind of hone in on what the typical traits are developed when a person is moving in their formative years from country to country, right? Living in diverse cultures, language, customs, right? They help build traits like tolerance, resiliency, adaptability, empathy, curiosity, and respect. That was intrinsic in me for other people, for other cultures. You realize over time that we as humans are all the same at the end of the day. We all want the same things. We want stability in our life. We want stability in our family's life. We want to be able to, provide a roof over our head. We want to have a mini vacation, whatever. But it is more or less the same across the globe, right? There's not, dramatically different things that just because you belong to a different culture, you may have different ones.
Mm.
I'm talking about 80% of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And professionally, right, those traits have helped me focus more on the human factor of people.
Mm.
I have worked, luckily, I have worked in digital transformation, in technology in general, and financial services. But all my focus has always been on the people, connecting with people, understanding what drives them, and when working with cross-functional, cross-country people, it has come easy because of the fact that I do understand that there are certain nuances to certain cultures. I'll give you an example. I was working with a team. We were doing a product launch, a global product launch, and I was working with a team in Japan. And not that I've lived in Japan, but I know the Asian culture, and there's a lot of focus on respectful words and how you greet, how you present something, where it is not a statement, it is more of a suggestion and ask. And those are things that I employed when I worked with this specific sales and engagement team. And during that time frame when I was working with them for this go-to-market launch, they were very specific on asking that, hey, can we work specifically with Shilpi on this? Because they felt comfortable around it. And of course, thankfully with my company, I had a lot of help in supporting them. But that's just one example of being able to reach out to people with the kind of background that I've had. So yeah, but I'll mention something though. These are all the positive aspects of what I have mentioned, right? Of having traveled and lived in different countries. On the flip side of this is not having a steady set of friends, not having a steady home to come home to, not really belonging in any one place. You're always the outsider, or you generated feelings of that whole imposter syndrome, right? And even today, I have to groom myself to say, I do belong. I do have a right to sit at the table, right? So these are things that I am untangling and working through, and I would say most of the time I pass, but it's a journey. It's something that I do talk to myself about on a regular basis.
Yeah, well, I love how you talk to the kind of the benefits, but then also realistically some of the things that have been challenges. And I think first and foremost, it shows your adaptability as you were traversing all these different countries and what the best way was to work with them that really equipped you, that happened earlier in your life. It's interesting as well. I love the positive affirmations, which I think are so important that we continue to say to ourselves. And, your point of, I do belong and I have a right to sit at the table, and continuing to tell these to yourself so that you can overcome imposter syndrome. Now, there was a point in your career, and I'd love for you to talk about this, where it was almost that pivotal point where you decided to shift from seeking a job to pursuing a career with purpose. So can you tell us more about that?
Definitely, Linus. And there was a time frame that was, I guess, specific. However, I think there were multiple moments that led to that pivoting. The moments included, actually, before I get to the moments, part of me turning down the promotions, turning down the opportunities, also meant that I didn't speak my mind all the time. I ensured that I kept some of my opinions to myself. I didn't share my viewpoints as openly. And I would say about 6-7 years ago, I'm not sure if it was my age or the coaching and mentoring that I have provided throughout my career to others in encouraging them to pursue what they want to, and coach them to pursue it. I think something must have clicked in my head that I am stating all of that to them. Maybe I need to take a look at it me inside. Is this what I want for myself as well? Right. And I think there was a part of me that got frustrated not being able to being on the sidelines, basically. Right. And I started speaking my mind, and it was received well. And I'm very thankful in hindsight that it was received well, because I'm still venturing out, and it kind of led me to a lot of my travel jobs. It led me to some really big enterprise level roles that I had, exposed me to some really smart, intelligent people who were driving things at global levels, who were driving initiatives that were long-term in view. And for me, learning is a very foundational and a very important thing. And those years for me have been all about learning, all about absorbing the growth that I think I was hungry for. And it took me a year to crystallize that thought that this is what I want. And since then, there's no turning back at all. And I absolutely love that I'm more thoughtful, more conscious, more aware of not only what I'm doing, but what do I want to do next? And it's not role-based, it's more growth-based. What are the things that I want to develop in myself and to move forward?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think sometimes there can be these like external factors of, even like what you said growing up of what you should be doing. And you do get to this point of, wait a minute, this is my life and it's time for me to create that life by design. The other thing you had mentioned, and I think it's so interesting because a lot of people, what they don't realize is, you look to these coaches for guidance and they're so amazing at what they do. But I know for me, and what I heard from you is, it's really hard to even take our own advice. So while we're good at giving it, we're not as great as actually listening to our own advice. And it's like, and that's where it's like, that's amazing. I loved for you that you said, it clicked and you're like, I also need to take this advice. So kudos to you and to more of us to start taking our own advice.
I agree. I agree. And that's a difficult thing, right? I think, you know, I think we do things when we are ready to do
Mm-hmm.
them, despite being aware of it.
It's so true.
And it's a journey. I think there's a lot of untangling uh, and 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 growth that needs to happen before you get to that point that, aha, this is a moment
Mm-hmm.
where I need to think about this, that, or make decisions on this or that. Yes,
Yeah. Well,
I hear you.
the other thing you had said too was just like, having the courage to speak up in these meetings. And I remember one of my coaches, speaking of coaches, I would tell her, oh, I don't want to say anything. I don't want to come across like it's a stupid question or it's not that great. Maybe it's not a smart idea. And I remember a powerful question she had asked me was, who is the one that's going to determine how smart that question is or how, well or bad? Who's the one that determines that? And it made me pause and think, I don't know. That's a good question because you start to create these people in your mind. And, it's like
Yes.
just take the courage and just ask it and
Yeah.
or say whatever your idea or opinion is on the matter. So I love that you had called that out. Now, what have been some of the most significant challenges that you've encountered in your career, especially as you're navigating different cultures and professional landscapes?
While I was at EY, speaking of wonderful opportunities, right? I was selected, asked, I would say, proposed to become an ambassador, basically, for my organization to be represented at the Global Innovation Center, which was based out of Germany. And I said yes. I didn't think twice. I said yes, and thankfully my family was very supportive of this. But this also meant moving to Germany for a few months. My goal or my initiative there, sorry, my objective there was to kind of not only build out the initiative that I had proposed initially, but also to do roadshows across Europe to kind of sell my idea
Mm-hmm.
and get folks to buy into it. And this was super exciting, but it also came with its fair share of challenges. I think on a personal level, since I've had kids, that was the first time I ended up having to stay away from them for 4 months, and they're still young. My little one was I 8, and my older one was 12, so they were fairly young. So having that anchor kind of
Mm-hmm.
disrupted a little bit of my refueling efforts during the time that I was there. I did have to set up my own apartment there. I had to, take care of the legal aspect of things, which a little bit of a challenge because of the whole language barrier aspect of it. Professionally, though, this was a brand new team for me. So selling my idea, my initiative to them without any trust was something that took me a bit to build. Took me a while to get to know them, to build trust with them, and then sell my idea and have their buy-in.
Mm-hmm.
Working across the various cultures, I work with Germans, Dutch, English folks, and understanding how they work, what they value, what they don't value, was also a learning point
Mm-hmm.
for me, or learning curve, I should say,
Mm-hmm.
for me. And then the adjustment of the interaction with the leadership that I was working with was a bit of a journey to understand what their drivers were, what they were expected, what I was expected to do, because I was representing my organization. So this was a lot of responsibility,
Yeah.
and I needed to ensure that I represent represented my bosses, my CTO actually,
Mm.
in the best possible manner. So, those were some of the challenges that I face. And, I'm methodical about how I um, manage that.
Mm-hmm.
And the people interaction definitely helped, and creating a roadmap of what I wanted to do, milestones, what I wanted to touch base.
Mm-hmm.
Those are things that helped me get through those a little bit more thoughtfully,
Mm.
and some took longer. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay, so you were away for 4 months when your kids were 8 and 12. Were you not able to see them at all for 4 months, or you saw them here and there?
No, I did come back
Okay.
and visited them for a week at a time, twice.
Oh, okay. And that's
Yeah.
incredible support, I imagine, from your husband to, support you in that. What was his reaction when you first brought it up to him about this opportunity?
So he's a huge believer in that we are all individuals. I'm a wife, and I'm a mother, but I'm also an individual. And my peace and my happiness helps me pour into them.
Mm.
And he recognizes, has always recognized, that there are certain things that drive me. And during those years when I was building up my professional career path, I was very focused, but I was also very excited. I didn't mind waking up at 5 in the morning to work. I didn't mind working 14, 15 hours a day, and he could see it in my face, in my energy levels. And I gave my all, even to them as well, over the weekends. And I think you recognize, when you've been together for 22 years, you recognize each other's energies, and he liked that energy, and he was very, very supportive. He is always very supportive throughout my ups and downs.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. Not only does he create beautiful backgrounds for your Zoom meetings, he also embraces individuality. And, I'm with you. I think we have to do a huge shout out to our partners who support us. I've been with my husband for 23 years, and, he's the same. And I can't speak highly enough, even though I'm running a podcast, for empowering future female leaders. My husband is my biggest advocate and my biggest supporter. And it sounds like the same for your husband. So I want to make sure to highlight them. Now, you had also spoken to the professional side, and it took you a while to build trust before you could actually sell your ideas. So how did you go about showing that value and advocating for yourself in environments that may not have been as welcoming or even supportive?
So my first thing, I always approach a lot of these things through, I have to have a plan. I have to have a strategy on how I'm approaching things, right? So I needed a global champion, and who already had a trust built with these teams. And I worked on building that trust level with him first. And based on that is how I ended up scaling that, I would say, to other members as well. So building that trust with him included ensuring clear communications, over communicating things with him, ensuring that he understood the benefits, the ROI of what it is that I was proposing. And he, extremely intelligent man, by the way, a German partner at EY, and he was very supportive. So from that point onwards, when I started doing roadshows in parts of Germany or UK or Amsterdam, he either accompanied me, or he was part of those calls when I was doing the roadshows to the various teams across the board. So that helped scale, and I think the goodwill passed on to other members as well. He is a very respected member in the European market within UI.
Well, that's brilliant too, that you had found an advocate and had leveraged him so that you guys could both continue to build trust and position EY. So kudos to you. I'm going to pivot slightly and go back to your advocacy work and supporting women. Now, you've mentioned to me in the past about starting a mentorship group and your involvement in these women networks. What motivated you to take these steps, and what impact have you seen from these initiatives?
Oh, wow. Yes, advocating for I think advocating for yourself is key in any environment, right? And typically the things that I focus on is ensuring that I am consistently and constantly focused on my objective, my role at all times, because there are going to be difficult situations, and sometimes emotions arise, sometimes friction arises due to different objectives, right? But if you're constantly keeping your objective in mind and your target goals that are professional and career focused, I think it takes away from the noise that can come around it. Helping track those success measures is also, and understanding what those success measures is also has also helped me, keep my eyes on the ball, so to speak. As I mentioned earlier, over communicating my journey, my accomplishments to the right audience makes a big difference as well. Documenting everything is huge. And the last thing, this is something that is recent with me, is networking with other departments, right? Go out and we all tend to work in one specific organization in whichever firm we're working in, right? And through either being extremely busy or just not knowing how to navigate it, we forget that there is a whole different set of departments out in this organization that run the whole business. And networking outside of your department helps you build camaraderie with other areas, helps to get know the other objectives of the organization. And who knows, there are opportunities that may come in that help you. So I think this is all of these things I take into consideration and kind of weave into advocating for myself accordingly. But there are times, Linus, I would say that no amount of advocacy for yourself can change certain environments. And if that environment is unhealthy and you don't have much control over it, then take yourself out of that environment for your mental peace, for your, I guess, longevity in sustaining your career and your energies. So.
Yeah. Well, I love how you talk about just this like self-advocacy, because oftentimes, especially as women, I feel like we're givers and we always want to make sure we're taking care of other people. But I think it's most important, if not the most important piece, is to take care of yourself and remove yourself, even more importantly, from a situation that is no longer serving you. And that's where I do feel like mentorship and continuing to surround yourself by a positive village is almost detrimental, I feel like, to your career. So how do you approach mentorship, and what advice do you offer to young women who are navigating their careers?
So I have been mentoring almost 25 years, and organically, not necessarily thought through, just organically, just connecting with people. So it is something that I have enjoyed a ton, and I still keep in touch and still mentor coach people I've known for 8+ years. And it is a privilege, and I'm very thankful because it's always a two-way street. And over the years, I've had a lot of people advise me, guided me through my professional career, and I'm very grateful for those contributions, for learning and growth. However, I have never had women mentors, women coaches, that have been around me, and this, in hindsight now, this has impacted me from the perspective of, I wish I had learned some of this, what I know today, on how to advance my career, how to advance myself, and being more self-aware. I wish I had somebody to guide me, who was a woman, because I work differently than a man does. And I've learned these things through my own hardship, through my own experiences. And with this thought, last year came the idea that, who are you waiting for, Shilpi? If you want to do this, if this is passionate for you, you don't need to work in a company to get these mentees. Go out and offer it as a service.
Yeah.
And with that came the inception of Thrive Nexus, which is a support empowerment group that I have. And it's basically a gathering of like-minded professional women who are very, very aware of who they are, but are also very focused on giving back to younger women or similar age women who are going through their journeys of professional roadblocks, self-awareness, or having more empathy towards themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been very lucky that I have met these people, and they have offered their support for this. And I'll give you an example that we have done recently. So there's a lady in our group who has had a phenomenal career in data and analytics, and it's some the area she's been is a very male dominated area, and she came in as a developer, ended up running the entire organization, data and analytics organization, and then 2 years ago decided, you know what, I want to pursue higher education. Got into Harvard, and she did her MBA from Harvard, and then this past December, she's like, Shilpi, I want to pursue my PhD, and is now pursuing a PhD. Now, one of the other members in my group, phenomenal, she's a managing director at EY, manages, a bunch of auditors who are all CPA certified, and her input is, Shilpi, I'm very good at my work, yes, but I feel like everybody who works for me is better educated, is better equipped in dealing with the accounting and finance aspect of it. I feel like I have this imposter syndrome, right? So she's like, my objective is to get myself a higher education. I want to pursue an MBA at an Ivy League school. So both of these ladies have now been introduced to each other and have been paired up. And this year, their goal is to pursue, create a roadmap, and also have milestone and hold each other accountable for the pursuit of higher education. And there are many members who are similar in their approach, who are coaching each other and helping each other through empowering each other throughout this journey.
Yeah. So. Now, you mentioned this group is Support Nexus. Is that what you said it's called?
It's Thrive Nexus.
Oh, okay. So, and I will make sure to add a link in the notes. Is that only local, or can anyone join you?
Anybody can join me. The only thing that I would say is for this year, I have kept it small. I am kind of keeping it no more than 10 people, because mentoring and coaching is not a framework. It's not one size fits all. It's chemistry between two people. It's passion that I may have on something that resonates with you, and hence the mentoring and the coaching starts, right? So when you create a group that becomes too big, I think it becomes a little diluted. So this year, my focus for 2024 is focused on having the group of no more than 10 folks for now. But yes, I would absolutely love for you to put the link in. I'll send you the link for it.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, and I will make sure to include in our notes. I think community is so powerful, but I think even more to your point is having a lot of those intimate relationships. And I think part of that is like, as much as we want to grow and get huge, I think it's important to kind of stay, small, at least in the beginnings, until you start to grow, so you can have more of that intentionality. Now, in terms of, personal and professional balance, and I'll even say, because I think balance is so black and white, let's use integration. So integrating your personal life and personal ambitions is so challenging for many women, including myself. So how do you manage this integration, and what advice do you have for women who may be struggling in this area?
I love that word, integration. So I feel like the foundation of any balance, any integration, any prioritization we can do comes from being aware of who you are, what you want, what is it that you value, because that awareness is what helps us prioritize what are the things that I need to give my energies to, and channel those energies constructively. So, for example, for me, it took me a bit to build that awareness that for me, what was most important at an overall perspective was my peace of mind, aka my health, my family, and my career. In that order is what's important to me. Of course, on a day-to-day basis, this changes. There are days when I'm more focused on my work, and there are days when I want to spend more time with my kids. Go on a lunch date with them. And there are days when I want to get away from everything and go on a mountain hike, for my peace of mind. So I think I would say my advice to women who are struggling with this is understanding who you are, what is important to you, and not just at this moment, but overall in your life is important. I think that'll help you figure out what are your priorities, and then live with those within those boundaries, because sometimes there's so much noise that you kind of get distracted and not are not able to integrate, to your point, things that are important to you. And there's a lot of things that come in that take up space, but and take up your energies, but don't really add value to your life. And I think that's imperative.
Yeah. The other thing that I thought of as you were saying that is, I think, highlighting again the importance of self-care and integrating that into your mix. I also think oftentimes a lot of us, we have this pressure on ourselves that eliminate things like self-care. And I think an important question that we all have to ask ourselves is, who is this for? Who is this serving? And I think that helps to better prioritize the integration. So those important pieces that you spoke to, that you identify, don't get missed in that process.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I love the because you're right, this completely ties in with self-care. What I would say is, and there are a few principles I follow with the whole aspect of self-care, is have boundaries. I think with women in general, right? We are and we have a hard time drawing boundaries, and I think that's an essential part of self-care. And take time for yourself to restore what makes you happy, restore yourself. And then the other thing I would say is stay away from react mode, get into create mode. I think reaction is something that takes up a lot of negative energy, and versus the create mode, kind of gives you more space to, heal and be more at peace with yourself. And I think lastly, I would say this: be kind to yourself. I think we are very hard on ourselves.
So true.
I think be kind to yourself and give ourselves permission to, celebrate the things that we've done. Celebrate ourselves. So that's something that I would share with everybody.
I think that's amazing advice. And yeah, I mean, agree. So how can women better support each other in professional environments? And what steps can we take to foster more of that inclusive and empowering workplace?
Great question, Linus. So this is something I would say actually not just to women, but to men as well. In your work environment, in your teams, elevate self-awareness through coaching and mentoring. I think that's an essential aspect of building people up. Build relationships that are more than transactional in nature. It takes away from the whole hierarchy mentality to becoming more collaborative in nature. And always be inclusive in the vision that you are building out for your team. I think it helps people feel included, and they're more likely to feel more vested and carry out that together as a team. When in meetings or discussions, manage the energy in that room, as in give everybody the space and the time to speak their mind, to have their contribution in. And I think for women specifically, right, welcome and honor intuition and instinct as much as you honor data. I think having a combination of analytical approach with a conceptual approach is an essential approach in reaching sound decisions. And I think lastly is reward the mindset and effort as much as success, as in create a space for both learning and growing. Take risks, basically.
Yeah, I love all of those. I think some of my favorite that I was just writing out was rewarding mindset. We're so numbers, intrinsic and looking at what's the ROI to things. But I think something, and especially as you're leading people, I think rewarding that mindset, because you can't teach people. I mean, I think it's really hard, but I think celebrating growth mindsets. I also think something that you had mentioned was managing the energy in the room and making sure that you're creating an inclusive environment to then welcoming and honoring your own intuition. We all have our spidey senses that we have been given through experience, and I think we need to embrace it more. So So good, Shilpi. My last question for you, my friend, is in a world full of possibilities, what mark do you dream of leaving as a trailblazer for future generations of empowered women?
Excellent question, Lynn. So my generation of women have been brought up, in the time period that they've been brought up with expectations, customs, culture, society in general, and they're defined in a certain way. And today we're having to unlearn all of that and discover ourselves and our possibilities. What I hope to see in the upcoming generation of women is that their awareness and potential will be innate in them, and that their journey will start where our ends, so they're much further ahead. That's what I hope to see in the future.
Yeah, I've loved every bit of this conversation, Shilpi. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your story. And a lot of what, I think some of the important nuggets out of this conversation is self-advocacy, making sure you're finding your champion to pave the way and build that trust. And I think most important is you do belong and you have a right to sit at this table. So thank you again. And as we wrap up today's episode, let's remember that in supporting one another, we amplify our strengths and break down barriers. So go out there, champion for your dreams, empower your peers, and continue to shape a future where every woman realizes her true potential. Until next time, see ya.